Hey, Godfather of Anxiety here. I wanted to do a video about Benign Fasciculation Syndrome, or BFS. And the reason why I want to do this video, other than the fact that I've had this since 2008, is because there seems to be somewhat of a link between anxiety, stress, and this condition where your muscles are twitching constantly. And so I thought this would be a good video to do. First, though, let me say this. If you're really worried about muscle twitches or any other medical issue, make sure you tell your doctor. Make sure you go see a doctor. He can refer you to a neurologist, and you can have tests done to rule out anything serious. So let's get that out of the way first. But I think after we go over this video, you'll get quite a good idea as to whether you have anything maybe to be concerned about or not. So then let's get into it. My experience with it, I noticed around 2008 that my calves started twitching. And when we all get muscle twitches, right? Like for years, for my whole life up until that point. If you don't get sleep, your eye twitches, or maybe you're nervous, your eyelids twitching for a couple days. It's, normally you get your sleep, you recover your sleep, and the twitching stops, or maybe you overuse a muscle, right? We've all done that too, You go out and you throw a ball 1,000 times and, there's a little muscle twitch in your shoulder or something. That's not what benign fasciculation syndrome is. At least not for me. For me, my calves have twitched 24 hours a day since 2008. And they never stop. I wake up in the morning, I can look at my calves, they're twitching. Before I go to bed, my calves are twitching. Now, they're not always twitching at the same level, Sometimes it looks like something's going to come out of my calf, like an alien or something. Sometimes it gets that bad, and other times it's rather subtle. Trust me, if you look at it, you'll notice it, but it's less. So, anyways, that's what happened, and I noticed it in 2008. And at that time, I wasn't under good treatment. That was right before I started getting good treatment for my anxiety conditions. And so I told my doctor then, didn't think anything of it. They do the general test of strength and stuff like that to make sure, look you over and see if anything looks like there's any atrophy or anything like that. He says, nah, he wasn't concerned. I've told my doctor since then about this, but there's never been any alarm at all. They might say keep an eye on it or something like that. So anyways, I got effectively treated in 2009. So I noticed my calves are twitching all the time, but it didn't bother me at all. I was still able to work out, play sports, whatever. So, not anything very concerning. But I had a relapse in 2018, and then I had a relapse in 2020 with my anxiety disorder. And especially in the one in 2020, there was, it seemed as though the twitching was kind of more rampant. And so this really elevated my anxiety. And I want to let you guys know some of the details about some of the muscle twitching, because you might see something and think, if I have this, it means this or whatever. But I think I can give you some insight here. First of all, if I'm dehydrated, these are benign twitches, but if I get really dehydrated, it will lead to cramps. That does happen. That's happened for basically since ever I've had this, but especially say the last 10 years. If I get really dehydrated, my calves, they'll want to cramp. because they're twitching all the time anyways, and it kind of just leads right into it. Another thing, I have had literally just about every muscle in my body twitch. And not just twitch for 30 seconds, but twitch for at least a few days at a time, if not, a lot longer than that. My back, about 3 years ago, I had this spot in my back that seemed to twitch probably about 6 months, right by my left shoulder blade. That's about 3 years ago now. I have no muscle atrophy or anything from it. But by a wide margin, the most disconcerting twitching that I had was with my relapse in 2020, my tongue. My tongue started twitching. And when I looked in the mirror and saw that my tongue was twitching, I was convinced that I had ALS. And I was going through a relapse anyways, and all I could think about was that. So I started mispronouncing words, everything. It sounded like I wasn't enunciating properly. So it took me off the deep end with health anxiety. So that's why I decided to make this video, because just because a certain muscle twitches, oh, my tongue twitches, that means, let me tell you guys, if your tongue's twitching from any neurodegenerative condition, any neurogenic disease, really good chance within just a few months, you're going to notice precipitous loss of function. So, if this has gone on for 6 months and you have no true deficit, don't get real worried about it. Always you want to monitor stuff like this, but again, normally, and I'll get into this a little later in the video, but normally it might even be someone else who tells you that you're not saying your words correctly when you have something like, ALS or some other neurogenic disease that is, a lot of the time someone else will say, hey, why are you talking like that? Are you tipsy? It won't be something you necessarily notice. So the fact that you're hyper aware of the twitching probably leans towards benign fasciculation syndrome, because there is a link with BFS and anxiety. So that is going to make you hyper aware and hypersensitive to any muscle twitching or anything like that goes on. So at that point, when I started getting tongue twitching in 2020, I thought, oh, I'm cashing out. But again, I went to see my doctor, and he did strength tests. He tested my reflexes. He was not at all in the same line of thinking as me. He did think, he says it seems pretty obvious that these things are related to your anxiety. But, if you've had anxiety disorder, you know how hard it is to believe someone telling you that this is anxiety when this symptoms are physiological. I mean, you can see these, right? You can see muscle twitches. So, and another thing, as far as if you haven't seen any loss of function, and I mean real loss of function, you're probably better off not going down the road of going to a neurologist, because all of these diseases, all neurological diseases, are diagnosed through exclusion. It's a diagnosis of exclusion. So they'll keep running nerve tests, EMGs, and nerve imaging testing, and they'll have you come back 6 months or a year just to see if anything changes with those, or if you have any loss of function, obviously. But for somebody with anxiety, now for a neurotypical person, that's not a big deal. Okay, yeah, I'll have it checked in 6 months or a year or whatever, and just keep doing your follow-ups. But as somebody with anxiety disorder, I can tell you that that would be torture. I mean, when I have my annual blood work done, I'm always expecting them to tell me something terrible. It's kind of like that when you have fought these anxiety spectrum conditions, you kind of, you don't want stuff hanging over your head. You want to know one way or the other what's up. And it's really hard to get anything definitive like that with, if you have benign fasciculation syndrome. You're going to have to go through something that's going to take a period of years till someone, till the neurologist finally tells you, hey, listen, nothing's changed. You're still twitching like crazy, but you're not losing any muscle, so just relax, and that's what they'll tell you. It's not anything to be worried about. So I just decided that, in 2020, I decided as I started to recover with my anxiety, I decided I'm not going to go to a neurologist unless I actually notice I'm losing some type of strength or function. And that's just another little side point I'll tell you guys. I've always been somebody who lifts weights and lifts heavy weights. So when you think you have a neurodegenerative condition, like ALS or Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis, when I would go to the gym, I would have to test my strength every time. And, if anybody out there goes to the gym a lot, there's days that you think you're going to tear it up at the gym. You're going to be able to lift a car, and you go there and the workout doesn't go very well. And there's other days when you drag yourself out of bed, maybe you're battling a cold or something, and you go there and you're as strong as a mountain gorilla. That's just kind of how that works, unless you're using performance-enhancing drugs or something. That's kind of how you'll have good days and bad days at the gym. So it was just I was constantly, checking my strength, and you just don't want to get to that point. So I wanted to make this video because I think even though they say benign fasciculation syndrome is rare, muscle twitching is common and prevalent because we're all overstressed. We're all, taking, a lot of us are using stimulants, so there's going to be a lot of people out there that experience muscle twitches. But as far as to the extent of calling it BFS or benign fasciculation syndrome, that tends to be a lot more rare. It isn't, however, and I believe in no way, shape, or form is it as rare as conditions like, ALS. So I think quite a few people I know have had some issues with muscle twitching that have gone on at least for a few weeks or months. And if you also have been diagnosed with an anxiety spectrum condition, I feel like this video can help you relax a little bit about what's really going on. So, ways to tell that you probably don't have a serious neurogenic or neurodegenerative disease. First of all, if there's no loss of strength, and I mean actual loss of strength, not perceived loss of strength, because I'm telling you guys, you can drive yourself crazy with that. But actual loss of strength or actual atrophy in the muscle that is visible not just by you, who might be, letting your anxiety affect what you're seeing. But if other people around you look at it and say it looks the same as the other, or, whether it's the size of the muscle or whatever it might be. So that if you have not lost any strength and your muscle is not atrophied at all, that's a really good sign that there's nothing serious going on. Also, if when you flex the muscle, the twitching stops. Again, this isn't, and I'm not trying to be a neurologist here, but if you flex the muscle and the twitching stops, then that's another really good sign that the cause of the twitching is not a serious neurogenic or neurological condition. Also, has it gone on for a long time? If it's gone on for a long time and you have no loss of function or strength, that's a really good sign. That's a really good sign that you have just benign fasciculations and that nothing's going to come of it. And that's the thing, guys. So like I was obsessed with my tongue twitching. In patients with ALS or motor neuron disease, when their tongue starts twitching, usually within 6 months, they may be on a ventilator. Now, this isn't always the case, and there are people who live 10 and 20 years with a condition like ALS, but that's a very small percentage. So it's a lot more likely that, it's going to progress rather quickly. And especially once it gets to the point of fasciculations, because in neurogenic diseases, the twitching, like with ALS, once it's twitching, the muscle's already dying. That means, because the nerves aren't working correctly, so the muscle's already going to be in the process of dying. And then another thing, one last thing I'll tell you, if somebody else if you notice the twitching, rather, if it's you who notices the twitching and no one else brought this to your attention, then it's probably benign. Because a lot of the time with those other conditions, someone else will tell you either you're slurring your words, they can see the twitching, you might not even feel it. It's usually very widespread as well. And so if these, if it's in, because BFS tends to affect your calves is a really big one, your calves, your thighs. I get twitches in my feet as well. So even your nose, there's your eyes, obviously. So if you're just getting them in a localized area and you're not noticing any loss of function or wasting, I wouldn't lose sleep over your twitching. And again, if you're concerned, make sure you go and see a doctor. And if you have BFS, if you've gone to your doctor and he says, no, I don't see anything to be concerned with, then there are some things that I can tell you to do that they're not going to probably eliminate the twitching. At least I haven't found anything that eliminates my muscle twitching, particularly in my calves. But make sure you're getting your sleep. I know I always say this with my anxiety spectrum videos, but it's the same thing with the twitching. If I'm not well rested, the twitching seems to be worse. Try to manage your stress effectively. So, my channel is all about going and getting seen by a mental health professional and getting treated for your anxiety. This should help if you do have BFS. This should help maybe somewhat mitigate the twitching. Again, guys, I don't believe it takes it away. And remember, the fact that they call it a syndrome, that means they don't understand the physiology or the causation of what's causing the twitching. That's the very nature of, why they call it a syndrome. You also may have to limit your caffeine intake. I don't notice a close correlation between my muscle twitching and caffeine intake. I notice a correlation with sleeping, and I do notice if I've really overexerted myself, that the twitching may be a little worse. I also notice if I have a lot of sugar for whatever reason. If I eat a lot of sugar, I notice my muscle twitching is worse. Another thing, make sure your calcium and your magnesium the levels are high enough, because If those are out of whack, if those are low, if you're low in magnesium or low in calcium, that can cause muscle twitching. Another thing that can cause it is your thyroid. So if you haven't had your thyroid checked, get your thyroid checked. That can cause very similar symptoms to benign fasciculation syndrome or something more serious. And also another one that might be a bummer to some of you is you may want to limit your alcohol consumption. That can sometimes make benign fasciculation syndrome worse. So the video went longer than I wanted it to, but I wanted to give you guys somewhat of an idea of why, my channel is called The Godfather of Anxiety. Why did I do one on benign fasciculation syndrome? Because I definitely believe there's a correlation. Science believes there's a correlation as well between stress management and these benign fasciculations. So, and I also, if I can keep somebody from thinking that, they're on their way out unnecessarily, that's important to me, because I've tortured myself over the years with, paying attention to twitches and everything else. But I think, it was really a low point there in 2020 when my tongue was twitching and, I'm videoing myself to see if I'm saying my words okay. It was really ugly. And I don't want any of you to go down that horrible rabbit hole. And, I can tell from other videos I've seen on benign fasciculation syndrome on YouTube that I'm not the only one that has tortured themselves because of this, benign condition. So anyways, thanks so much for watching. Thank you guys for your engagement to the channel, for like, share, subscribe. It's been really nice to see all of the comments as well as, the likes. And if you know somebody who, is worried about muscle twitching, have them take a look at this video. And obviously, if you have anybody that that experiences any of the anxiety spectrum conditions, have them check out the channel. But thanks so much for watching, and until my next video, take care.